It's episode 96 of Delivering Marketing Joy, and I talk with author Jeff Haden. He tells us how to get in front of rock stars on your prospect list, like Serena Williams. Hey there, and welcome to another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. I'm super excited. I'm your host, Kirby Hasseman. I'm super excited because I have a return guest that has always been a rock star for us, Jeff Haden. Thank you so much for being with us again, man.
Oh, it is always my pleasure.
And if you don't know, I don't know what rock you've been living under, but if you don't know Jeff's a ghostwriter. He's a LinkedIn influencer stud, and he is an Inc.com writer as well. He's got some great stuff. If you're an entrepreneur or in business of any way, you want to check out his stuff online. But Jeff, I want to jump into the questions today on, in any business, it doesn't matter what business you're in, there's a list of like rock stars that you might want to get in front of, right? You've had some success with that. I know you've told me that in the past. So can you tell us maybe some of the rock stars that you've worked with and maybe some tips on how to make that happen?
Yeah, it's as always with me, it's a goofy story. At the beginning of the year, I was trying to set some goals for the year and trying to, for Inc. at least, and trying to go past page views and, stuff like that. And I thought, why don't I make this the year of seeing how many famous people I can actually interview and talk to?
Okay.
And it, like most goals, it works on multiple levels. One, it's fun, and I thought it would be interesting, and I would learn something from it. Two, typically people that are successful have interesting things to say, so it works great for content. Three, and not inconsequentially, they tend to draw attention, and so it's good. So it works on multiple levels, which is how all goals ought to be, because if you're trying to reach out to whoever it is in your industry you're trying to get to, you ought to have a reason, and you ought to have more than one goal. So what I found, I guess my biggest tip is that getting in front of people who you think you would not be able to get in front of starts with the very same thing that networking is based on. You have to figure out what you're going to do for them and why, what's in it for them. The with them thing applies no matter where you are on the food chain. And so, the trick, if you're, let's say you're, trying to get in front of a venture capital guy, you can connect on that venture capital level, like, hey, I need funding, you should fund me. Well, he gets 1,000 of those. She gets 1,000 of those. But there's other things, if you know the person, there's other things about them that they are either interested in or like to talk about or wish that they were known for, but don't usually get to talk about. And so those are the places, to me, that you go chase.
Right.
So like one example is Venus Williams, tennis player, one of the best tennis players of all time. But she also started a clothing line, and she didn't just do it like, here's my name and someone else goes off and runs it. She actually runs the business. She designs, she reaches out to vendors, she sets up distribution agreements. She's heavily involved in the thing. Well, she loves to talk about that. She doesn't really want to talk about tennis that much because every question about tennis has been asked or answered, but she likes talking about that. So that actually turned out to be a pretty easy get, because I found something that she thought, I like to talk about that. I want to promote my brand. I like talking about this because clearly she's interested in it. So it's a perfect way to kind of slide in. Another example, I haven't talked to him yet, but I've got it lined up. If you're a heavy metal fan in any way, shape, or form, you know who Metallica is. And so Kirk Hammett, the guitarist in Metallica, he has started a company where he's making effects pedals, he and another guy. So if I was trying to get Kirk on the phone to talk about music, probably not going to get there. I don't work for Rolling Stone, probably not going to get there. But he wants to talk about his business, and he likes talking about entrepreneurship, and he likes talking about the challenges of, hey, I've got this crazy idea, but how do I actually make it a product that people will like, and how do I sell it? He really likes that. So that turned out to be, I sent one email, and immediately got a response back like, okay, when are you available? So because I found the right way to approach it. So the trick really is, it does fall back on that networking principle. It's not what can you do for me? It's the John F. Kennedy thing. It's what can I do for you? And how can I be smart enough to come at it in a way that 50,000 other people don't come at it? so that you'll respond.
No, that's actually really, really good advice, and not at, the reason it makes so much sense is because not everybody does it, right? Yeah, I mean,
it's like with Kirk, it was easy because if I go to the Metallic, like say you're trying to find contact information.
right.
To my knowledge, Kirk is not on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's probably not the place where he hangs out. So I could go to the Metallica website, but everybody and their brother is probably sending in stuff, and there may not even be a way to do that.
Yeah.
But his pedal company is very small. It has a PR guy. It has a managing partner. Send them an email. I've bypassed all of that other filter stuff and gotten to people who also have a vested interest in me talking to Kirk, because the company would like publicity for what they do. So, it's another one of those things where you just have to look and you have to say, okay, I need to know more about this person than just this one thing they're known for, and I need to connect in that way. And I know that sounds kind of manipulative, but really it's not, because what it means is you're figuring out what matters to that person,
right, and
you're caring about what matters to that person, and then you're trying to do something that will help them with that. So I don't see it as manipulative at all.
Yeah, no, actually, Gary Vaynerchuk actually talks a little bit about this, where he does a good job through Twitter search about getting to know the person that he wants, and all of a sudden they're he's a big Jets fan, so you send him a Jets jersey. Well, at the end of the day, you're going to connect.
Right.
So just out of curiosity, you've had some success gathering some of these people. Is there any of these rock stars that you've learned a specific lesson from that's interesting?
The biggest lesson I've learned is that it is still going to be a numbers game, and you are not, I don't care how savvy you are, you're not going to get to everybody, whether it's the timing, whether it's there's too many filters, whether whatever you think you can do for them just doesn't really matter. Not everyone cares that I can get them some exposure in ink. I'm probably not going to get to Jimmy Page. I would like to, the Led Zeppelin guy. I would like to get to Jimmy Page, but I'm probably not going to get to Jimmy Page. So it is a numbers game. And I think the other thing I learned, because I did have a publicity person for one of the companies of a person who I will not name, who I was trying to get to, emailed me back and said, dude, if you didn't hear from us after 2 emails, you're probably not going to. And I thought, that's right. And it made me remember all the people that pitch me stories for ink. And I'll get like 10 emails from the same person. Hey, following up. Hey, following up. And I get like 30 a day, so I don't answer them all. And so give it your shot. Maybe follow up once, but find a good way to follow up. Yeah. And then after that, there are other fish in the sea.
That's actually really interesting and a little counterintuitive to what you hear sometimes too, right? You hear people like, oh, don't give up, but with those kind of folks, maybe it's a different lesson. I
think it depends on how you did your initial approach. If you did the shotgun, generic, I took a form letter thing and stuck a couple personal things in it and sent that out, and I'm hoping somebody reads it. If that's what you did, then it may take you 10 of those, But if you've done something where you found, like with Kirk, I just said, hey, I like doing stories about people that you don't think of as entrepreneurs, but musicians are in the business of themselves. Yeah. And I love doing startup stuff where somebody says, okay, I want to make something. This is a phone, but I want to make this. How do I even start? And what's the journey? Because lots of people want to read about that. So I kind of packaged it up that way and said, I think this would be really cool. Well, that's fairly personal. Yeah. And if they don't respond to that the first time, that probably means they're not interested. And so me repeating that process, I'm not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But you and I have talked in the past about, and it was one of my favorite conversations where we talked about, it was ironically a famous person, right? Why Rob Lowe was making you do 100,000 push-ups or whatever. Right. But the lesson in that is that, a little bit every day moves the meter. And I took a lot from that. I thought that was really a powerful message. So has this sort of worked? You were talking about how this being a numbers game. Has that sort of philosophy worked in trying to make contacts with others, or is that kind of totally separate?
No, it's the same thing. I sit down and, like yesterday, this Kirk thing I just did last night. Oh, okay. And I had an answer this morning at like 4 a.m. So, but I sat down yesterday evening. I was watching the Olympics, and you don't have to pay rigid attention to the Olympics, but it's on. And so I just thought, I'm going to try Kirk, and I have 5 or 6 other people that I decided to try. And I just sat there and it was kind of casual, and I figured out my approach. They're all people I know something about. And the reason I want to talk to them and interview them is because I am interested. Yeah. It's not like I looked around and said, okay, who's the hot name? Let me try that, because I don't know enough about the hot name to make it personal. Yeah. So, but every week I try to send out 5, 6, 7 things. For whatever reason, I've gotten in, like with NASCAR. Hendrick Motorsports is probably the biggest team in NASCAR, and I seem to be best buddies with their PR people now. And they got me a conversation with Rick Hendrick, which is notoriously hard to do. He's the guy that owns the place. But it is it's reps, it's reps. Grinding it out. And it's like, okay, let me try. You don't get discouraged when one doesn't go well. You get happy when one does, and it motivates you to keep going. But it's a process. Yeah. And along the way, the other thing about you don't want to be so numbers oriented that you're saying, okay, I'm going to do 100 of these a week, because clearly there's no meaning and there's no connection there. But you'd be surprised by the connections that you make that you wouldn't have thought you would make that turn out to be really beneficial. Like if you're trying to get to Mark Cuban, I don't know, let's take that. Yeah. Well, there are other people like Mark Cuban that you would like to know or work with as well. Sure. So you try Mark, but you try some others, and you never know. The guy that was 9th on your list might be the one where it actually works really well for you, whereas hoping to get in front of Mark Cuban, well, just because you got there doesn't mean anything. So, you know what I mean? So there's a power in the numbers as well with that, because you don't always know how it's going to turn out. And sometimes it turns out way better than you would have thought, but if you hadn't tried, you never know.
Yeah, it's funny. There's actually a thing within our team that we're focusing very much on, sort of that same concept where, every company's like, oh, I want a yearly or a quarterly or a weekly goal sales of this. And what we've kind of decided is, look, we can't control that. I can't make somebody buy something, but what we can control is that front end activity. And so We're spending the effort of saying, look, this is how many proactive sales contacts, whatever that may look like, because we can control that. And it is funny how if you do that, it leads down here quickly.
Oh, yeah. So, I remember there were a couple of ladies that started a company, and they were talking about how long the client acquisition process took and how many leads it took to get to one. Mm-hmm. And she finally said, it's like we've got to talk to 30 people to get 3 to sign. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, how many a month do you need to sign, roughly speaking, in order to be successful? And she said, 6 or 8. I said, okay, well, your answer is then you need to talk to about 100 people. Yeah. And use that as your metric. Right. Obviously you're going to try to qualify the leads, and you're not just going to talk to random people, and you're going to try to get your success rate to be better. You're always going to try to improve. But if it does kind of hold true that every 10 calls results in some action you want, and you need a certain number of actions, that does give you a sense of how many calls you need to be making. And then it's a matter of grinding it out and trying to get better at what you do.
Well, and to your point, we actually talked about this last time, but it does remind me, if I make 100 calls a week, let's just say, by the 4th week, I'm going to be better at it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right? So
if you are paying attention and you're trying to learn and you're reflecting a little bit at the end of the day, like, okay, what went pretty well there? Yeah. What didn't go well? If you're thinking about it, you are going to get better. Yeah. So
no, that's great.
Yeah, everybody wants give me the key that gives me one time, gets one result every time. And if you know what it is, please tell me.
I haven't met anybody who knows it yet.
Yeah. Everybody I know that's successful works on that principle of, I'm going to take a lot of shots at whatever it is that I'm trying to do. And that's not only how I get better, but that's how I have a better chance of success as I'm going along.
Cool, man. Well, Jeff, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time today.
You're welcome.
Always appreciate you doing it. And we'll do it again, man.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for watching, but wait! Can you do me a favor? Please subscribe to my channel. If you haven't done it already, the way to do it's right over here. And hey, if you want to watch the last episode, check that out over here. Again, before you leave, subscribe!